Line 6 Helix Native software and Line 6 Helix hardware do not sound the same no matter what I try. This is a complaint I hear from a lot of folks. And recently, with the resurgence of people talking about setting the instrument input gain on their audio interface in a certain way, it's causing even more problems. Today, we're going to talk about how you can fix this and how you can be assured that the tones you're getting from Helix Native will be exactly the same as from the Line 6 Helix Floor, Helix LT, Helix Rack hardware. So come with me and let's sort this out once and for all. So what a lot of people don't realize is when we plug into the Line 6 Helix, not just for recording, but for live playing, essentially we're plugging into an audio interface, which is then going to hit the so-called software side of things inside. Now that has a preset level that it is hitting the amp models with. Now, if we decide to put a boost in front of that Helix hardware, then we're going to affect how much saturation or distortion we get out of the amp model we're using. And this is the point a lot of people miss. Helix hardware has a set input level. To get technical about it, it has an approximate maximum input level of about 11 to 11.5 dBu. Now that's an important number to understand if we want to utilize a different audio interface to send our guitar signal into Helix Native and have it sound the same as Helix hardware. We're going to have to actually match that number. Now you might ask, where do I find this number? Well, a lot of audio interface manufacturers will give us this in the technical specification. What you want to do is find the technical specifications for the audio interface that you're using. And here's the problem. They all can be different. I mean, some are going to be the same, but a lot are going to be different. So if we go into the technical specifications and look at the instrument input or the high impedance input, it may have a specification there that says maximum input level. If your audio interface is somewhere around 11 or 11.5 dBu maximum input level with the instrument input gain at minimum, then you could plug straight into that audio interface, touch nothing, and when used with Helix Native, it will sound exactly the same as Helix hardware. The problem is you're likely going to find that the specifications on your audio interface are different. And today I'm going to give you quite a number of examples of different audio interfaces from very inexpensive to much more expensive and with wildly different specs, and show how that doesn't matter. As long as we have an understanding of what we're using with our audio interface, we can dial it in so it's going to sound the same as Helix hardware, or so close that nobody is going to be able to decipher any difference. Today I'm going to be utilizing some very inexpensive audio interfaces from IK Multimedia. We're going to use the iRig HDX. We're going to use the iRig USB. We're going to use the Axe IO1. I'm also going to utilize a Universal Audio Apollo Solo and an Audient Evo 4 and also a MOTU UltraLite Mark V. These all have quite different specifications, but it's really not an issue. So if we go into the manuals of some of these, what you're going to see is something like the IK Multimedia iRig HDX is going to have a maximum input level of 9 dBu. If we go to the iRig USB, we're going to see that that one is actually advertises 13.5. I actually measure it around 14. I'm not going to nitpick too much about 0.5 dB as most people are not going to hear a difference anyways. If we move over to the Axe IO1, that's measured as having a maximum input level of 10.5. Something like the Universal Audio Apollo Solo is going to have 12.5 dBu maximum input level. And I'm also going to throw in Tonex pedal being used as an audio interface if we were to use it with something like Helix Native. Tonex pedal has a fixed maximum input level, and the global input trim on it doesn't change that. That comes after the A to D converter, so it doesn't matter in this case. So it's got a fixed maximum input level of 8 dBu. So what does this all mean? Well, we're trying to get these different audio interfaces to match up with the Line 6 Helix hardware, which we already know has, let's just say, about 11.5 dBu. So if you plug into a Universal Audio Apollo Solo with the instrument input at minimum gain, you're going to be getting 12.5 dBu, meaning you're going to have slightly more headroom. So you're going to have to actually raise the input gain on the instrument input by 1 dB, almost nothing at all. And in fact, if you left it at minimum, you may not even notice a difference. It's going to be so close. But if we want to be very particular, we'd have to bring that up approximately 1 dB. Now, something like the iRig HDX also has a fixed instrument input, and it's 9 dBu. So that actually has somewhat less headroom than the Line 6 Helix Floor hardware. So we actually have to bring the level of that back. Now, since we can't do it on the hardware, we need to actually go within Helix Native, and since that's 9 dBu and we're aiming for 11.5, we have to subtract 2.5 dB on the input of Helix Native as is being shown on the screen. Now, something like the iRig USB, which has a maximum input, as I measured it, around 14 dBu, we're going to have to actually add about 2.5 dB to that, and we can do that with the instrument input gain control that it has right on that as an audio interface. Now, something very interesting that you do have to be careful about is taking something like the Audient Evo 4. When I looked at the specifications the manufacturer put out, it says that that has a maximum input level of 10 dBu. Now, when I actually measured that instrument input with its gain at the minimum setting, I actually measured it as 18 dBu. So you can see that that has a lot more headroom than something like the Helix floor. So we're going to have to actually add in and around 6.5 to 7 dB of gain to that to have it match. And that's exactly what I did with the high impedance gain knob. I just moved it up until it matched. So as you can see, we can't just go in and say whatever audio interface we're using, we're just going to leave it minimum gain and it's going to work. It's absolutely not. It's really going to depend on the specification of each audio interface. So I hope looking at the specifications like that and giving you the numbers I've shown you today is going to help you to understand just how much or how little you're going to have to change your audio interface's high impedance instrument input to match Helix hardware. So one really important point to remember is if you're following what a lot of people suggest in this so-called conventional wisdom of every time you plug a guitar in, turn your instrument level up till clipping and then back it off a little bit, every guitar is going to be boosted to this super high level, and it's going to be pretty much impossible to match that with any Helix hardware. Helix hardware does not have an instrument input level. It is fixed, as I mentioned, with a maximum input level of approximately 11.5 dBu. So unless we're feeding it with the exact same signal with our audio interface, we are going to get different tones, either overgained or undergained, depending on if we're hitting it with too much level or too little level. And this is why I don't like this way that so many people suggest of constantly adjusting per guitar. We want that particular guitar's character to shine through, and a part of that character is how much level it is putting out. Now, very shortly, I'm going to let you hear all of these interfaces feeding into Helix Native dialed in the proper way compared to Helix hardware. And you're going to see just how incredibly close we can get even the least expensive audio interface out there set up to hit the front of Helix Native with the same level as Helix floor. It's going to sound really, really, really close. So some of the common audio interfaces on the market, audio interfaces like the newer generation Focusrite Scarlett, basically are going to be 12.5 dBu maximum input level. So we would have to add 1 dB to that to match up with Helix hardware, or just leave it at minimum gain and we are going to get basically the same sound as what we would get out of Helix hardware. Slightly different, but some folks may not even notice that difference. Audio interfaces like Universal Audio's Apollo line, same thing as the Focusrite Scarlett. We're going to be about 12 to 12.5 dBu maximum input level. So again, we have to add about 1 dB. Now we're going to have things like my MOTU UltraLite Mark V, which is going to have 19 dBu maximum input level, which I actually have to run my instrument input by boosting 8 dB on that high impedance instrument input. And then guess what? When I feed that into Helix Native, it sounds the same as when I plug into my Helix floor. You may not believe me on this, but now I'm going to prove it to you. And I'm going to play some audio now. We are going to compare the tone played directly into Helix hardware, and then we are going to compare that same performance played through the audio interface you're going to see on screen with the settings into Helix Native. And we're going to do a long audio sample and a short audio sample so you can compare the difference in sound between playing through Helix hardware and a properly dialed in audio interface to match what we would expect from the Helix hardware. All right, what did you guys think? I think you're going to agree that those were incredibly close. And we can see now that Helix Native is going to sound pretty much exactly the same as Helix Hardware when we go into an audio interface, regardless of price, but dial it in with the proper amount of input gain hitting the front of Helix Native. I hope that you guys do find this useful. This has been a really hot topic lately, and there's been some really bad advice that's causing a lot of confusion. It's raised a lot of questions. I've had people reaching out to me about this, so I figured I would do this video to kind of let you know exactly what you need to do to make sure that you're actually getting the Helix tones out of Helix Native. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please like the video. Please share it with anybody you think would get some use or enjoyment of watching it. And also please subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content. I'll be back really, really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. I'm going to leave you with some music on the way out. The links will be below to the presets that I used in this particular demo, and I hope you enjoy.